Good evening, dear friends and followers. Welcome to tonight's Friday with Irina show. I'm very happy to start this series of shows, and I hope it will be interesting and enjoyable for you. Well, it looks like I'm almost ready. So, tonight we will be examining quite an interesting theme. It is called the pair of bishops in Endgames. We'll see a game of mine which I played this year during the Sharjah Cup for Women in the United Arab Emirates in January. Please write to me if you hear and see me well. So today I've started to use a new app for streaming, and I hope all works just fine. Hello Udo, thank you for joining. Hello Alexandra, thank you for letting me know that all is in place to start. Okay then. The game was played during the fourth round of the event when both players, me and Olga Zimina, had 3 points out of 3. As the game was being played in the morning, it was a day with double round. I decided for the following variation: e4, c5, knight f3, e6, the Sicilian, d4, c takes, knight takes, knight f6, knight c3, knight c6, knight d to b5. Well, here black has several continuations. One of the main lines is to play d6 and to transpose to some Sveshnikov lines. But my opponent chose another move. She played bishop b4. The idea of this variation is mainly to try as hard as possible to exchange all the pieces and equalize for black, so it's a very peaceful variation, I would say. a3, bishop takes c3, knight takes c3. Well, black has given very early to white the advantage of the pair of bishops. And now the idea is to play d5. And here the main variation would go e takes d5, e takes d5, bishop to d3, short castle, d4, knight e2, and so on, bishop g4. Well, and the position is more pleasant for white, definitely, but there are very long variations which lead to quite drawish tendencies, I'd say. That morning I thought that I should go for a simple position, one where I am sure about my advantage, and when I can play for just 2 results, I would say a risk-free position. So how do you think I continued? I played bishop d3. This is a sideline, of course, but it has a very simplistic approach. Black has two choices in this position: to either take on e4 or to close up the center with a move like d4. After d4, knight e2 would be the logical continuation, e5, short castle, short castle. The position is unclear, and I would say that white has somewhat of an edge because of plans linked with f4. Of course, we can prepare it with moves like h3 and then continue with queen e1 and queen g3. Instead, my opponent chose to go to the endgame taking on e4, d takes e4, knight takes, bishop takes e4, queen takes d1, king takes d1. Now let's look at the position. What are the pluses for each side? Well, feel free to write. I will do my best reading the chat and pointing out if anyone is saying a correct variation or a correct assessment. The first thing that we notice in the position, what it is? It is the pair of bishops, of course. White has two bishops against a bishop and a knight. That's basically the main theme of tonight's show, the pair of bishops. On the other hand, we have lost the right to make a castle with white, so the king is stuck on d1 in the center. If black can manage to create some threats against our king, then we might be in trouble. But taking into account the fact that the queens are swept out of the board, it might be a bit difficult for black to do so. What else? We can notice that white has a pawn majority on the queen side, while black has a pawn majority on the king side. Normally in this kind of positions, even with queens on board, one part should play on the side where it has an advantage, and this advantage is usually brought by the pawn majority. So logically, black should try to play on the king side, with his pawn majority being there, while we should start to play on the queen side. But let's take step by step. Black played bishop d7 here. Well, probably the main concern was that I might take on c6 if black castles. Bishop c6, b takes c6. And well, in positions with different colored bishops and rooks on the board, the side which is more active has the advantage. And here black's bishop is slightly more passive, and white can start to improve his position on the queen side. Anyway, it is a pretty equal position, but with a bit more pleasant play for white. Open position with pair of bishop for white. Indeed, Udo, you are right. In endgame, the king position must be centralized, someone is saying. You are right, Papa Botez. It is true, though with rooks on the board, one should be careful for threats. Udo is saying that he thinks it's important that center position is open for the white bishops. Of course, this is a point we'll be getting to, how to open up the bishops and how to prevent that with black. In the game, my opponent, after king takes d1, played bishop d7. The game continued with bishop e3, developing the bishop. f5 now. Bishop to d3 I played. Well, it's not that big of a choice. White can either take on c6, which we don't want to do because, hey, we want to keep the pair of bishops, right? Bishop f3 would be another possibility, though I did not like it so much because of e5. And then e4 is coming, and the bishop on f3 is slightly misplaced. This is why I put it on d3, so that after e5, which happened in the game, threatening e4, I could have the f3 move. Now black's pawns are stopped, they cannot advance. And what is white's plan in this position? What do you think would be the next step in exploiting our pair of bishops, of course? What should white strive to in this position? I'm waiting for suggestions. Queenside attack. Well, yes, that's true. We decided that our plan should be linked with the queen side. Bring the rooks in the game. Well, that's also very important. How do we do it? How would you continue with white? Which move would you make? Black continued in this position. Well, after f3, I forgot to put the move. King f7 was played. And now it's white to move. So feel free to suggest moves here. Somebody is writing something about another members from the chat. Udo suggests to play king e2 or c3 and king c2. Well, yes, the main issue in our position is the king on d1, which is definitely not staying very well here. We should decide where to put it. c3 would be an idea, though there is something a bit slower, but creating in the same time some other threats. It is always useful to combine two plans. Long castle. Well, long castle would be nice, yeah, but castling is unfortunately not possible here. I will help you out and tell you what I played in the game. I played b3 with the idea to play king c1 and king b2, placing it into safety and in the same time sometimes threatening bishop c4. I didn't want to play c3 instead and king c2 because the pawn wants to actually advance on c4 at some point, and the king will feel a bit exposed on the c-file. So my feeling was that the king on b2 was better. Somebody's wondering if it's not a bit too slow. Well, in endgames, this is our main advantage, that we can slowly improve the position. As we can see, black doesn't have any immediate threats, so white has time to put its pieces on the best possible squares. So the game continued with b3. What would be the plan for black in this position? The pair of bishops is definitely an advantage for white, but black's position isn't bad as well. It will be a battle of plans, of who will manage to find a better plan and who will manage to find the best square for his pieces. What do you suggest for black to play here? Rook d8. I think it's rook a to d8. Yeah, that's a good move. Threatening to play e4, I guess, because after f, let's put it on the board. Oh, it should be rook a to d8 with the threat of e4, and when everything will be taken on e4, some check will happen, and that would be big trouble for white. Rook a to d8 is an idea, but it doesn't get in the way of our plan, which is to play king c1. Now e4 is no longer possible. Of course, black can continue with bishop e6, king to b2, and while black's rook is centralized, you should still come up with a plan, with what to do next. So, what other suggestions do you have? Rook h to d8 you wanted. Well, that was also an idea, though As I said before, as black has a pawn majority on the king side, his play should be connected with the king side. And what can he do here? He can advance his pawns and try to create a passed pawn or a free pawn. Well, f4, g5, g4. Yes, that is a good idea, though I wouldn't exactly start with f4 because it weakens the e4 square and the bishop will feel very comfortable there. Perhaps you could prepare the g5 with another move. What would that be? King f6 maybe? King f6 I think would be a good try. And there, after king c1, g5, king b2, black can choose from playing rook to e8 and then e4, or playing h5 and h4. But not g4. Why not? Because again it weakens the e4 square, and now the e5 pawn will rather be a weakness and not a strength. In the game, my opponent chose to start with h5. She understood correctly that she should play on this side of the board. I continued logically with king to c1. And here, like someone suggested, was it Alexandra? My opponent played f4. She thought that weakening the e4 square is not essential, and perhaps she prepared the highlighted maneuver, king f6, with the idea of exchanging one bishop by playing bishop to f5. The game continued with bishop f2, king to f6 now. Black is ready for both g5 and bishop f5. I continued with rook to d1. Now after bishop f5 and the eventual exchange of the white squared bishops, white will be ready to control the d-file with the rook. That was the main purpose of my last move. Why not bishop g5 before, someone is asking. When was that? After h5, I guess? Well, bishop g5 would be an idea, but the bishop might be somehow out of the game on this square. Perhaps black could play, let's think, maybe h4, and then rook h5 and g5. I understand that bishop g5 is meant to prevent the advance of black's g-pawn, but it takes too much time and eventually it will have to go back. So let's go back to the game. Bishop f2, king f6, rook to d1. Black played rook h to d8. I continued with what? What was the plan? I think it should be an easy move to make. For a morning game, it was important for me that my plan was very easy. Yeah, king to b2, of course. Well spotted. King b2. Black continued with bishop to f5. Now black wants to exchange one of our bishops so that we won't have the advantage of this pair of bishops anymore. And you know, I remember one interesting thing which my coach said to me at some point when I was a kid. What do you think? What is the main advantage of the bishop pair? What is it connected with? Do you know? Do you have any ideas? The first one would be that they control many squares. And unlike the knight, in an open position, yeah, you control both colors of squares. That's true. What else? You can mate. Yes, that's also true. Though, let's stick to the endgame part. What are the advantages in the endgame? The long range. Yes, that's true. What else? An important fact is that when one side, I mean the side with the with the pair of bishops will have a passed pawn, then it will be easier to move it forward and to support its movement than with the knight. Move fast from side to side. Yes, this means that the bishops will be able to multitask, to both support your plan. Let's say in this position, when we have the pawn majority on the queen side, the bishop might help the pawns to go forward, and in the same time they can get into black's way of moving his pawns forward. Well, but you still did not find what is the main advantage of the pair of bishops. Any other suggestions? There is quite a funny one, though if you will think of it after I'm gonna say it, I'm sure you'll say, ah, of course. So, any more suggestions, or should I just tell you? Can cover and squares. Well, yes. This with covering the squares, we've decided that it's true. What else? Well, I think I'm gonna say what it is. The main advantage of the pair of bishops is that at some point you can exchange a bishop and still be left with another one. That's quite funny. But when you think of it, look at this position. Black has managed to exchange, let's say, one bishop, our white squared bishop. But we are still left with another bishop, which is better than the knight on c6. The knight is usually better than a bishop when he has outposts. An outpost is a square defended by a pawn, and one which cannot be attacked by our opponent's pawn. So in this position we see that black's knight has no outposts, which makes the play more difficult for black. This is why in this position I was not afraid of exchanging one bishop, and I played bishop takes f5, king takes f5. How should white continue now? The king is safe on b2. We have a rook on d1 controlling the d file, but black has some control on it as well. What would be the logical plan for us now? Isn't that going both ways? The side with a bishop and knight will be left with a knight. Well, yes, it's of course it's both ways, but assuming that we have a pair of bishops in an open position, then one bishop should still be better than the knight. Someone in the chat is wondering whether black isn't better here. Why would that be? What advantages do you see in black's position? The king is more advanced. Yes, that is true. Though, Is it a positive thing or not? More space. Well, yes, you can argue that black has more space. So let's come up with a plan for white here to try to counter all those things which Papa Botes is saying here. Let's try to find a plan for white. Open files are equally controlled, yes. Though an important factor in this position is to assess how will the endgame be if all the rooks go go off the board. If we exchange all the rooks and only the bishop and the knight will be left, how this endgame will be. It's very important to understand it in order to make the correct evaluation of the position. Udo is suggesting that he could bring the rook to the e file. Well, yes, but as you said, the d2 square will be uncovered. Without rooks, black can place the minority on light color. Yes, but okay, let me help you out on this. If the rooks go off the board, then our plan will be to create a passed pawn on the queen side. If we manage to do so, it will be quite difficult for black to stop our pawn, because the bishop, having a big diagonal to himself, g1, the diagonal g1 a7, he both helps the pawn, eventually let's say the c pawn when it will be a passed pawn. It will help it to run towards queen, and at the same time it will stop black's pawns on the king side. Yes, Udo is right, the advantage will be bigger without the rooks, because you see we have two islands of pawns each. Black has this, oops, I made something wrong. So black has one island of pawn, two islands of pawn, and so does white. When this is the case and the play is on both flanks, then usually a bishop is better than the knight, because as you said before, the knight needs more moves in order to run from one flank to another. That is the main reason why the endgame without rooks will be much better for white. Yes, that's exactly what Udo said as well. Hello, Drunken Valley. You have a funny nickname. Thank you for joining. Okay, so we assessed that the position will be better for white without rooks. Hello everyone, thank you for joining. Please suggest a plan for white in this position. As Papa Botes was saying, black's advance is quite advanced on the king side, so we should advance on the queen side and try to create our own threats. Because if we do nothing, black will just play g5, g4, and then take on f3, go rook g8, rook g2, and white will be busted. So we don't have any more time to just to waste. b4. Well, b4 wouldn't be a good move because it will give away all the white squares. And then after an eventual b5, white's pawn's advance will be stopped, and also black's pawn feel very comfortable on light squares because the bishop is not able to attack it. So the idea of a pawn advance on the queen side is correct, but the right way to make it is to play c4. Now we control the square b5. We also were ready to play b4 as well. Now what would be the best continuation for black? Let's listen to the ones who argued that the position is better for black here. How would you continue? g5. Yes, indeed, that is the move, the logical continuation. Like we said, black tries to create an advanced pawn on the king side. How should white now proceed? Well, I see b4 now. Yes, b4 now is indeed a good move, though I preferred to prepare it a bit more with playing king to c3, also taking control of the d4 square so that the knight cannot go there. How would black continue now? Yeah, king c3, correct. Mr. Papa Botez is saying that he would take black here. Okay, so I'm waiting for suggestions for black then. What is the move to be played here by black? g5 is already played, so I guess that the move is g4. That is the move which happened in the game as well. Yes, g4, correct. And now it is a very important moment. How would you proceed with white? It involves some calculation as well, so feel free to take your time, don't hurry. Think of calculate for like 2 moves. Bishop h4. Well, I'm not sure. Why bishop h4? You just wanted to threaten the rook on d8. Well, let's take a look at this move. Black would probably have to take on d1, take on d1, and now he will have a move like knight to d4, and suddenly the pawn on f3 is hanging. Maybe we can even take on f3 first, take, and then play knight d4, and white is in big trouble. So white cannot afford to lose control over the d4 square. This is why bishop h4 isn't a good move. What other suggestions do you have? Think like this. What is black's threat in the position? Do you see any immediate threats? I guess you don't, because there are not so many here. Black's main idea would probably be to take on f3 and then try to play rook g8, but then you'll have rook to d7, so maybe that's not a great idea. Or you can take g takes f3, g takes f3, and e4. That was the position which I wanted you to assess, if it is a dangerous threat or not. Well, in the game, I calculated these variations and I realized that black's threats are not dangerous. So I continued with my plan, advancing the pawns on the queen side and playing b4. Unlike black, who didn't have immediate threats, white does have, I mean. He wants to play b5, and now you see how important it is that the d4 square is controlled and the knight cannot jump there. If black allows us to play b5, then we will continue with c5 as well, and suddenly, with only 2 free moves, we will be already advancing our pawn very dangerously ahead. After b4, someone is suggesting b6. Well, very good for you. Alexandra, b6 is a very good move indeed. You have noticed quite well that after b6 I can no longer play b5 because of knight a5, and now the knight regroups. It wants to come to b7 and then to c5. And again the advance of the pawns will be somewhat difficult, because here c5 is not possible as there are some tactics. B takes, bishop takes, now rook to c8, pinning the bishop, and after king b4 there are 2 possibilities. One is to take on c5 and then to give a fork on b3, or to play knight b3 immediately, which I think is better, because when white captures the knight, black can take, and take on c5. And now the rook endgame, it is not clear that that white is better here. I would probably take black in this position. This is why b6 is indeed a good move. And now another important moment. How should white continue? Well, let's find another plan. How do we play here? Take your time. This is not an easy position, though as you see, even though black was faster with his plan in the beginning, it seems like it is more difficult for black now to find all these defensive moves, while white has quite a simple plan. Let's see if you find it. h3. Prophylaxis. Okay, why would h3 be prophylaxis? What is it meant to be against? I'm not seeing it, because as we concluded before, black doesn't have any immediate threats. After h3, I wouldn't close the position with g3. I would maybe even take on f3. Rook to d5. Well, rook to d5 is an interesting move indeed. Wanting to double on the d file, and in the same time meaning to capture back with the pawn and create a passed pawn here. Though I'm not sure it is the best continuation in this position. Why not? Well, there are a few arguments. Black can play knight e7, making white capture on d8, and after rook takes to d8, now it is black who controls the d file. And if the pawn advances, we can just take it. And taking on c5 wouldn't be good because of knight to c6 and the pawn is blocked. While taking with the bishop is possible, but probably, I don't think, well, oh sorry, rook to g8 was a mouse slip. First, rook d7 is possible, and the position is very unclear because black threatens to play e4 now, and he might be the first one to create a passed pawn. That's why I wouldn't go with rook to d5. The rook stays very well on d1, and let me show you some variation before. Here when I played b4 and black played b6, it was important to calculate how is the position after g takes f3, g takes f3, e4, f takes e4, king takes e4, rook to e1 check, king f3. One might think that black is doing great, but actually it is black who is in trouble after a move like rook to f1. And now you see we have still some pieces left on the board, and the king is not exactly feeling comfortable on f3. He might get in real big trouble, and he might even get mated at some point. That's why e4 wasn't a threat with the 4 rooks on the board. And that's why I would like to keep it this way rather than exchanging a pair of rooks. That's why after b6 another move should be found. Well, Alexandra is doing very well tonight. a4 and a5. Indeed, that's the correct move. Why so? Well, as we saw that after b5 there is the possibility of knight to a5, and black is just fine. After a4, white threatens to play a5 first, and then after b takes a5, b5. That is the main idea, and that's why a4 is a good move. Now, how would you continue with black? Any ideas? We know that white wants to play a5. Do you stop it? Or do you try to continue your counterplay on the king side? h4. Well, h4 is an interesting move, though it involves a pawn sacrifice. Are you sure this works? h4. Let's try it. Bishop takes h4. Rook to h8, probably, taking advantage that we cannot play g3 because of g takes f3. Well then, what should we do? Bishop f2 maybe, but then black will have rook takes h2, and the position is very unclear, perhaps even better for black. That's why after h4, white probably doesn't have to react here and play the suggested move by Alexandra a few moves ago, h3. Now it is time to prevent black from playing h3 himself, and the advance of black's pawns is somewhat stopped. Well, h4 would be a nice try. What other suggestions do you have? Well, in the game, my opponent also went for some tactical variation. She continued with g3, here again, g takes f3 would be met by g takes, and after e4, f takes, king takes, rook to e1 check. If the king goes to f3, then again rook to f1 and the king's in trouble. But black might have played king to f5, and after a5, which was white's idea when playing a4, black would have knight to e5 with a balanced position. Perhaps this is the best move that black had, to play g takes f3, g takes e4, and to free the e5 square for the knight. Let me see if you had other suggestions as well. No, Alexandra is still with the variation with h4. In the game, my opponent played g3. Her idea is that after h takes g3, as I played in the game, f takes g3. If I take with the bishop on g3, she will have rook g8, and when the bishop goes away, the pawn on g2 is left without defense. That would be a good move if not some tactics which she missed in the game. We'll come later to it. Here I was not sure, deciding if I should take on g3 or play bishop to g1 and continue my plan with a5. That would be an option, I guess, but I spotted an interesting trap here. Bishop takes g3, rook to g8, bishop to h4 now. What is my idea? If black takes on g2, what was the move I prepared for my opponent in this variation? Let's see if anyone notices. Rook d6, very well. Attacking both the knight on c6 and threatening mate on f6. Though the variation continues, it's not so easy. Black has a defense. He can play rook to g6, rook takes g6, king takes g6, rook to g1, king to f5, rook g5, king f4, and now rook takes h5. The main idea is that after king takes f3, white can play b5, and when the knight goes away we will capture the e5 pawn and we'll be left with a pawn up and a winning endgame. Of course, the variation is not forced. Here, after rook takes h5, the best move for black is to play knight to d4 and take the pawn on f3 with the knight. Here, after rook h7, the position will be very unclear, with a lot to be going on, because black will take probably the f3 pawn. We'll have to maybe give a check first, and after king e3 go with the bishop somewhere, maybe to g3. And then black will try to make the best out of his e-pawn, while we will try to make the best out of our c-pawn. And here, in this position, we actually see that the bishop might be better than the knight, because it will help our c-pawn run towards promotion, while it will also stop black's e-pawn from doing the same. Still, it was the best continuation for black after bishop h4 to go for this endgame. Instead, my opponent decided to do some prophylaxis. And to stop the advance of my pawns on the queen side, she played a5, planning after b5 to play knight d4 probably, and only then taking on g2. The pawn, of course, doesn't go anywhere, and at some point black will be able to capture it, but even if not, we can see that black's two pawns, b6 and a5, are successfully stopping white's three pawns. So what is the continuation after a5? How should white proceed? Will anyone spot what is wrong in black's position? Rook to d6, of course. And what is the variation behind it? What happens, let's say, after a takes b4 check? Where would you go now? That's actually what happened in the game as well. You should have calculated all of this before playing rook to d6, otherwise the pawn on b4 will just go down. King to b2. Well, that is not correct, Udo. And we will soon see why. Well, the main issue of king to b2 is that after rook to g6, g4 check, that was white's idea, h takes g4, f takes g4. Now the king cannot capture because the rook on g6 is hanging, but black has rook to g4, attacking the bishop on h4. And now when we take, black will take back, and it will most probably end up with a draw here. So after a takes b4, white has a better move. Let's see if you spot it. Oh, after king b2, even rook g2 first works. Well, that's true, Papa Bottas. I did not... it escaped to me that the pawn was hanging, but I just wanted to illustrate this variation because then it's easier to find the best move for white, which is indeed king to d3. Now it was important to cover the e4 square so that after the variation which we saw before, rook g6, g4, h takes, f takes, rook takes g4. Now we see how important it is that the e4 square is covered because we have rook to f6 mate. Surprise! That is why king d3 was a very important move. And it appears that black will lose a piece. As we saw, rook gc doesn't work, and now both the knight on c6 is attacked and a mate on f6 is coming. Also, the bishop from h4 is controlling the d8 square so that the rook cannot go there. And black is basically totally busted. She tried to play e4. Now the idea is that if I would take on e4, king g4 would happen, and black attacks the h4 bishop. That's why white has to be still very careful. I played king to e3. Now black continued with e takes f3. The problem with rook g6 is that f takes e4 is happening, and when the king goes away, we will capture the rook. She continued with e takes f3, but now rook to f6 check, king e5, and here I didn't even want to take the knight because I spotted that I can play g takes f3, and the threat f4 mate is almost impossible to stop. She tried rook to g3, arguing that after bishop takes g3 she can play king takes f6. But of course, rook takes c6 happened. The game continued only a few more moves. Rook h3, rook to d1, not even defending the bishop on h4 because after rook takes h4, rook to d5 mate, rook to a5, and now rook to g1. And the mate is coming from g5. After, let's say, rook h4, rook g5 would be mate. Yeah, king e3 wasn't very pleasant. So you see, in this game, it looked like black was faster on the queen side. Probably that was what my opponent thought as well. But the bishop pair was a very important asset. And even when my opponent took some time and managed to exchange the light squared bishops, our black squared bishop was still much better than the knight. Because when the game is going, or how should I better say, when the play is on both sides of the board, not just on one flank, then the bishop is a better piece as it is able to control the whole board. And here we saw how to take advantage of this factor, and also how to play when how to make a plan when we have a pawn majority on one side. This is actually a very important thing to remember, because many times one plays not on the side where it is supposed to, but in order to figure out where you have, on which side of the board you need to play, you should simply look where you have a pawn majority, and that's usually the place where you should start your actions. Well, now it is time for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. I hope that you enjoyed the game and you saw how to use the advantage of a better bishop versus a knight, and also of a pair of bishops. I hope you liked this game, and I will be coming with more shows like this every Friday. If you were not a professional chess player, what career would you choose? Well, that's an interesting question, so I'm thinking over it these days, as there are not many chess tournaments. Well, I think I would do something in writing, perhaps, as I have a blog and I like writing articles and also discovering things about new subjects. I think I might have been a writer or a journalist or something like that. Obscure Cloud is saying that he's glad he stumbled upon the stream. Well, I'm glad you did as well. I hope you enjoyed it. Good game. Well, thank you, Alexandra, and congratulations for being so active and spotting so many good moves today. Yeah, you can check out my blog, irinabulmaga.blogspot.com, for some chess-related articles. Obscure Cloud is asking, which books do you recommend for chess calculation training? where there are a lot of good books depending on the level you are at. One of the last books I studied was one of the Jacob Agard's books. He has some volumes which are very good for calculation for advanced players. But another very useful thing is um, to, to solve chess studies, because they not only develop your calculation but also your imagination, and also they help you during the game to never to always try to find a defense even in hopeless positions. Alexandra is saying that she's doing Agard's calculation right now. Well, very good for you. It's a good book and it should definitely improve your skills. What other interests and hobbies do you have? Well, what other interests? Well, like I mentioned, I like writing, which I do on my blog. I'm also a keen reader, so I like to enjoy a good book. And actually, during this quarantine time, I did read some really nice books. If you'll be interested, I can share the names of it later. Imagination in Chess is a good book. Well, whose is this book? I'm not sure. I'm familiar with it, Danesh. Is it also Jacob Agard's? I don't think I recall such a book. Well, saying that, I also enjoy listening to good music. Gaprindashvili's. Well, I cannot say about this book as I'm not familiar with it, but I'm sure it should be an interesting one, judging by the name of the author. Which books have I read during this quarantine? Well, I have a friend who is a very keen reader himself, and well, actually he reads a lot of books, like 30 books, 40 books per month, which is absolutely unbelievable for me, as such amount, well, it's impossible for me to read that much. But I asked him to make a list of books for me, some which he thinks I would like, and so far I have read 3 of them, which I really enjoyed. One book is Normal People by Sally Rooney. It's quite a new book. I'm sure you can find it online. I have read it in English, but I checked it is available in Romania as well. Also, another book I read this quarantine was Berta Isla by a Spanish writer. I also found it very interesting. The list can continue. Maybe I will leave the titles in the chat if you are interested. Let me answer some other questions. Your English is very good. Did you learn it in school? Well, thank you. I still feel that my English could be improved. Yes, I learned it in school from a very young age. And well, being an international language, one which most of my friends speak at chess tournaments, it was necessary to learn. Who is your favorite Romanian player? Well, that's a funny question. I will say that my favorite Romanian player is myself, because I have a genuine belief that I can still improve and become better and better, and without some dose of confidence, and maybe even self-confidence, overconfidence, however you want to call it, without it one cannot succeed as a chess player. That's why my favorite Romanian player is myself. So on this positive note, let me finish tonight's stream. I really hope you enjoyed it. I will leave those titles for you in the chat soon. Also, please write to me either here on the channel or on the social media. What are you interested in? What teams would you like to see in the next streams? And if you enjoyed tonight's show, feel free to use the support the stream button under the video image if you want to, of course, if you want to support the stream and the future shows. It will be appreciated. Once again, thank you very much, and I wish you all a nice weekend. Until next Friday!